Well, glad you're back for another chapter. This is chapter 17 of the book of Exodus. We're continuing on in this story as the Israelites are now traveling away from the land of Egypt towards the land of Canaan, where that is their land of inheritance from Abraham. Basically, they were given a land of Canaan, where Abraham and Isaac and Jacob once dwelled. So in chapter 17, Israel murmurs for want of water. Remember, in last chapter, they murmured because of want of bread. And this is the second time they've murmured about wanting water. Moses smites a rock in Horeb, and water gushes forth. Aaron and Hur uphold Moses' hand so that Joshua prevails against Amalek. So this is, other than fleeing Egypt, now they actually are dealing with a battle, a conflict with another group. So let's get into this. Verse 1, and all the congregation of the children of Israel journeyed from the wilderness of Sin after their journeys, according to the commandment of the Lord, and pitched in Rephidim. And there was no water for the people to drink. Now you could look up Sin and Rephidim, these locations in the Bible dictionary, to understand a little better what they are, what did we know about them, basically. So challenge is now there's no water for where they're at. They're getting food every morning that they gather up and use, but now there's no water. So verse 2, wherefore the people did chide Moses and said, give us water that we may drink. And Moses said to them, why chide ye with me? Wherefore do ye tempt the Lord? So they're trying to complain to Moses about this, basically, and they're kind of trying to not tempt the Lord, but like test the Lord. Like, why are you trying to do this? So verse 3, and the people thirsted there for water, and the people murmured against Moses and said, wherefore is this that thou hast brought us out of Egypt to kill us and our children and our cattle with thirst? Now that is the third time they've used that analogy of, oh, you just brought us out here to kill us. Is this what you're here to do? You saved us from Egypt, but now you're going to starve and dehydrate us to death. So that seemed to be a pretty common excuse or thing that the children of Israel went to when they were pretty upset and not happy about the situation. So verse 4, Moses cried unto the Lord, saying, what shall I do unto this people? They be almost ready to stone me. So they were mad. They were really mad. Verse 5, the Lord said unto Moses, go on before the people and take with thee of the elders of Israel, and thy rod wherewith thou smotest the river, take in thine hand and go. So remember, he smote the Nile with it to turn it to blood. He smote the Red Sea and it parted. So he's going to smite something again with his rod. And he's got the elders of Israel as a witness of what's going on with this, basically. Verse 6, behold, I will stand before thee there upon the rock in Horeb, and thou shalt smite the rock, and there shall come water out of it, that the people may drink. And Moses did so in the sight of the elders of Israel. So he does this. He goes over, smites this rock, water starts coming out. Could it be a miraculous thing? Yeah. Are there some wells or some, I should not say wells, but springs in that area? From what I understand, in the vicinity somewhere out that way are some springs that seem to be up there. So could that be what Moses found? Maybe he found a spring and hit the rock, it moved, and it allowed a spring to naturally flow. Maybe. We don't know exactly. Again, a lot of people spend a lot of time trying to find a way to justify or to logically understand what God is doing. And I'm sure there is a way to logically understand it, but sometimes there might be components of it that we don't fully understand at the time. So we don't know for sure. I mean, if we were there or saw a video or, like a YouTube video of Moses doing this, maybe we could go, oh yeah, look at that. Here's some info. Here's how it worked. Oh, okay, great. The thing is just because you might be able to logically understand it doesn't mean it's any less of a miracle, especially if you're dying of thirst. You're not questioning where the water's coming from, just that you got some good water to drink. So then verse 7, and he called the name of the place Massa and Meribah. And because of the chiding of the children of Israel, and because they tempted the Lord, saying, is the Lord among us or not? So they kind of complained a lot and griped about it. So that's why he called that this place. It was common to call the place after an event or a person or something that happened there, basically. Verse 8, then came Amalek and fought with Israel in Rephidim. So Amalek shows up. with his tribe, his people, and they end up in a fight with Israel, basically. Amalek is in the Bible dictionary. You can look him up. It is believed that he was a descendant. So let's see, he was part of, what tribe was it that I was looking at? Esau. He's probably a descendant of Esau, most likely. So they're sort of family. They're kind of a distant cousins, basically, to Israel. And Moses said unto Joshua, so here's the first time we hear about Joshua. He has his own book in the Old Testament. So this is our first instance of understanding Joshua. He says, Joshua, choose out men and go out and fight with Amalek. Tomorrow I will stand on the top of the hill with the rod of God in mine hand. So again, using that rod, a rod is a symbol of power. That's why kings and pharaohs and others would have a staff or a rod in their hand, as it was a symbol of power. So Moses's staff was a symbol of power, and it actually had that priesthood authority that he had that went along with it. So when he exercised it, it worked, basically. So Joshua, this is verse 10. So Joshua did as Moses had said to him and fought with Amalek, and Moses and Aaron and Hur went up to the top of the hill. Hur is in the Bible dictionary if you want to look him up as well to learn more. Verse 11, it came to pass when Moses held up his hand that Israel prevailed, and when he let down his hand, Amalek prevailed. So interesting that Moses, when he put his hands up, Israel fought well and did great. When Moses' hands came down, he got tired probably. You got to realize Moses is not a spring chicken when all this is happening. People lived back then probably 50 some odd years. He's probably in his 40s. So he's up there in age, and he's probably getting tired of holding his hands up. And as his hands come down, Amalek starts to do better. And realize if Amalek is from Esau, remember, that's the brother of Jacob. So, and this is the children of Israel or Jacob. So that distant cousin idea. And there might be a little bit of animosity, even though Esau and Jacob reconciled. Maybe the descendants of Esau aren't very happy, basically. And maybe too, because Moses basically has a spring in this area that's pretty arid and dry, that they're fighting over resources. It could be that they're fighting over resources as well, because now they have a water source and they're going, Mom, I need that water source too for our people, so I'm going to come take it over. Okay, so verse 12, and Moses' hands were heavy, and they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat thereon. And Aaron and Hur stayed up his hands, one on the one side and the other on the other side. His hands were steady until the going down of the sun. So they gave him a place to sit so Moses could sit down, and then they had Aaron and Hur hold up one of Moses' hands. They helped support his hand so that the Israelites would win the war against Amalek. So kind of a cool idea that this has here for us, because if you think about it, it's really a good analogy to presidencies. That idea of a presidency, that there's an authority person who's called. They are to represent the Lord to that congregation or people. They have authority to act in the name of God, that priesthood. And so they need help to help them in accomplishing their goals. And so they have counselors that help them and support that president in their efforts and in their work. So they can, kind of a cool idea that they help other people out. This analogy has been used in several times in the past. In fact, was it N. Eldon Tanner that had said this once about the prophet, saying that I am a counselor to the prophet, me and Elder so-and-so are counselors, and we support the prophet. And so that's why it's important for us to look to the prophet and follow the prophet, and we support him, and you should all help support him as well. Kind of use the same analogy with Moses. But when we support our leaders and help our leaders with the burden that they've been given, then that's important. That is part of what we do. If you're a counselor especially, you have a direct obligation to help that leader out. But even if you're not, helping the leader out to lighten their load, to do things is very, very important. So just remember that when the bishop calls you in, calls you to a calling, calls to talk to you, discuss things, he's fulfilling his responsibilities as a leader of a ward, or if a state president says it, or whoever, these are the people who hold the keys to help us out. So let's be supportive of them and help them in their callings and what they're doing, because it's a lot. It's a lot of stuff that goes on that they do that nobody ever knows about. So it's just important that we make sure that we are supporting our leaders, leaders of the church and leaders of the local congregations and things as well, is really, really important, which is great because at the time this is being shared out, we just had General Conference. So if you haven't watched it, go watch General Conference. Support what the leaders are telling us as well. Is really good, because those are the people that are just like Moses. Okay, they're telling us the word of God. It's important that we follow what the advice that they're giving. So verse 13, and Joshua discomfited Amalek and his people with the edge of the sword. Basically weakened him, disabled him, pretty much made it to where he's out of the fight. He's not fighting anymore, basically. He might be still alive, but he is not going to continue the fight himself. Verse 14, and the Lord said unto Moses, write this for a memorial in a book, and rehearse it in the ears of Joshua, for I will utterly put out the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven. That's powerful. That is powerful. Why did this war happen? Now, we don't have a ton of information in the Old Testament. Here's what's going on. In some other writings and other things, we learn that one of the things that Amalek tried to do was, usually you're going to send your best fighters first, take them, go head to head with the best, and then kind of whatever comes later, basically. Amalek had changed what he did, and he actually went after the weak parts of Israel, killing the weak, the infirm, the people who couldn't defend themselves properly, and started wiping them out that way, leaving some of the stronger ones left. And because he did it in this fashion that was more cowardly in a way, it was probably seen back then, the Lord was very unhappy with Amalek. And so he's basically saying, you need to document that this is happening, because I'm going to wipe out Amalek. Basically, I want you to wipe him out for these things, which is pretty crazy. So you write this down, you send a decree to Joshua, wipe him out. God said, wipe him out, basically. Pretty interesting. Verse 15, and Moses built an altar and called the name of it Jehovah Nissi, or the Lord is my banner. So understand too with this, and you can look that up, Jehovah Nissi in the Bible dictionary. It is in there to help you out. The Lord is my banner. There is a tradition that has been around for a very long time of using flags or banners in war. And you see this, it was in Lord of the Rings with the Middle Earth wars. You see it in medieval times, where whenever a war, an army would come forward, they're wearing the colors of the king, the colors of their land, and they're fighting under the banner of their land to defend their land and do things. That's why our troops wear a flag on their shoulder, is that similar kind of idea of remember who you're fighting for. And so he's saying here, the Lord is my banner. We fight because God has instructed us to do things, and we're doing what he wants us to do, and he is supporting us in what we do. So this is not an uncommon idea. So when we get into the Book of Mormon and learn more about the title of liberty that Captain Moroni does, realize he didn't start anything new. He's following ancient tradition in what he's doing, basically. It's really important that was a tradition that had been established long before Captain Moroni was around, but he's utilizing it. And we don't get as much data about that in the Old Testament. We kind of have to look at ancient historical writings to gain more information and insight in that. Verse 16, for he said, because the Lord has sworn that the Lord will have war with Amalek from generation to generation. So it's basically verse 16 in A, because the word because if you look in the footnotes, Hebrew, a hand upon the throne of the Lord, an oath of strong affirmation. So saying basically there's a challenge here. There's probably more of a backstory to look at. Bible Dictionary probably has a little bit more information on that. But Amalek has not done some things right, and God has said time for him to go, time for him to leave this earth. So that is what's been happening in chapter 17 of the book of Exodus. So some interesting ideas that we learn, little tidbits of information that, again, most people hadn't thought about or realized that is in here. But some interesting things. Even though the words Amalek, we end up seeing that actually in the Book of Mormon, which is fascinating. The Book of Mormon names are very proper for ancient Hebrew and ancient world names. It's really fascinating. Even Egyptian names show up in the Book of Mormon that are very Old Testament, very ancient, that we have, which again gives more credence to the value of the Book of Mormon, that it is very correct, even historically correct. Some fun stuff there. So let's stay tuned for chapter 18 and see where this wraps up.